to Wake the Bear Radio with your host, Brandon Johnson, Chris Hurst, and Ron Powers.
Roar number 100.
100. That is awesome. What an achievement. You know, these aren't daily, these have been weekly.
I am impressed.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years. I remember when we first started our first day at the station, which hopefully we will be back in that room again, not as guests, but as our own shows. But we have carried on through podcast land. And 100, that is something, you know, we have all 100 shows videotaped and audio taped in our website. And so if anyone wants to see any of our old shows, you're welcome to go to wakethebearradio.com. Now, some of these shows are timeless, where we interview somebody that's involved in something, and it's not necessarily the news of that week. And so you can find plenty of good content that is still just as fresh, just as powerful today as it was when it first was being shared. So I would encourage you, don't write it off. I know I get in a habit. I want to hear the latest within the last 12 hours. So
yeah, well, I think you're right, Ron. I think one of the things that when you're talking about the stuff we're talking about, and you're talking about principles and you're talking about events, some of them are not, they're timeless because they're time bombs. Like, we've discussed something over here, and then we've said what we thought was going on, and now we found out that it was true. Like, and we're going to talk about some of that tonight. Like that now Ivermectin is now good for you. We'll talk about some of those things that are now. you have to watch what was said before by the media, the narrative, and what is being said now. You really can only get the context if you remember what was said before. So I'm excited about tonight's show, and we're going to be talking about a few of those things. Chris, you're back with us tonight. Excited to have you back.
Yes, and my love tank is full. I was with family, and I've got the most beautiful grandsons in the world. And later this week, I'll be with my other son, who has beautiful granddaughters, and both my daughters-in-law are going to be having babies. So I am just in grandma heaven, and I'm very excited. You know what President Trump said about babies and having children, and how he even wanted to get a town where babies, you know, a new baby boom was started. Well, my family is starting the new baby boom, and they are right on time. So I am just very excited.
Chris's posterity is starting a whole new baby boom just in her own lineage. I love it.
That's good.
Well, I just a couple things that happened to me. I'm on week 6 of the Patriot Academy class, which is called Biblical Citizenship. Patriot Academy class put together by Rick Green, David Barton, and Kirk Cameron. I am with a group of about 30 people. We're going through this material. It is amazing. I'm blown away at how good it is. Rick Green is a lawyer, and he said, "Listen, the stuff I'm teaching you right now, they never taught us in law school." And he's teaching on the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights, basic things that everybody should know. Unfortunately, things that aren't even being taught in elementary, junior high, or high school, and not even taught in law school. In fact, in our class, we had one person who's a lawyer. He sat in the back, and he said, and I heard him saying, like, "I'm a lawyer. I went through law school. I don't even know this stuff." And so anyways, if you're interested, we're going to be starting more Patriot Academy classes, biblical citizenship, what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a patriot, what it meant back then, what the Constitution meant back then, and what it means today. So yeah, if you're interested, look it up, Patriot Academy, or come join us if you're local.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
How about you, Ron? What have you been up to?
Well, you know, I finished a milestone, which was really a load off my back, but a fun journey as well. I'm getting ready to go to Africa, Malawi, Africa. And one of the things I wanted to do was to show the movie or the series, The Chosen. But I wanted to have subtitles added to it, Chichewa. And so I looked into into Angel Studios. They do not have Chichewa out yet. So I'm just doing it until they do officially have one out. And I went in and added for the first season Um, and I used Google Translate, and then I translated back from Chichewa back to English to make sure it carried through, and was able to do that. And I tell you all that not for any pats on the back, but it's like, you know what? You don't have to have an organization and be told all these things. You could just be in, prayer and say, Lord, what would you like me to do? Because I am basically representing a whole studio. If it weren't for doing this, this film wouldn't really be made available to all these people. And so you can really position yourself in a place of impact with just a little minimal, I'll say minimal effort. Although each episode is probably about 20, 25 hours. Anyway, finish season 1. I'm going to go with season 1, and we'll see if that season 2 and 3, happen in the future. But we're going to show it. What's nice about going to Malawi is because there's no electricity in these villages, you go to show a movie and the whole town comes out. There'll be 200-300 people sitting on the ground waiting. And so I was able to ship out, we had a container go out with other stuff, and I was able to get a battery operated projector and a battery operated speakers. When I say battery, you just charge them for and then they play for hours. And so I don't need to have a loud generator, which we've done in the past with the Jesus film, the old 1979 one. But this is going to be 8 episodes. If you haven't seen it and you live in America, see it. It is by far the best series I've ever seen on Jesus. I mean, it puts me in tears almost every time. So
yeah, and I want to say quick plug for Ron for that organization. His to Offer is one of the sponsors of Wake the Bear Radio. They've been sponsoring us from the very beginning, all the way up to 100 shows. So we want to thank His to Offer, who's doing this ministry, Patty Brady and others out in Malawi. So thanks for doing that, Ron.
Yeah, we will be praying for you. Because I was, there are 2 places I went and showed with a group, showed the Jesus film. One was in Mozambique, and that was the night I saw a blind eye open. It was on a sheet with the old reel-to-reel. And like you said, the whole village came out, and I saw a witch doctor who turned to Jesus and got baptized right there. And then up in the Himalayas, we did it with just a solar battery on a first February, right before the main cruise came through on the trekking. And in both situations, God showed up in a powerful way. So we just bless your time. And we ask the Lord to really communicate his goodness and kindness and who the person of Jesus is through these films that you'll be showing.
Oh, amen.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Well, hey,
that was
tonight,
all the fun stuff. We should probably talk about our big story now, which is
being in the midst of challenging times, we still have joy. The Bible says, Jesus literally says, take heart. You will face trials in this world, but take heart. I have overcome the world. So we're in the middle of this battle right now with the Maui fires, the loss of life, the no comment. But I think one of the things we talked about as for our theme tonight is just give it time. All of these things we have to watch and wait and not rush to judgment, but at the same time, ask the right questions and give it time for things to play out and pay attention, because like we said before, what was said 2 years ago and what is being said now, you need to be able to see over time to see the arc of how justice is being played out. And like Dr. Martin Luther King said, it may take some time, but the arc of history leans towards justice. So,
that's because our God is a God of justice, and the foundation of his throne is righteousness and justice. And we want to start out just by saying how sorry we are for the loss of life. And we want to offer our prayers and our condolences. And obviously there's loss of property, but in this Maui fire, there have been quite a few homes that have been lost, and they have a list as of this morning that I heard of 800 missing. And so we just want to say that our hearts are with you. And as we talk about the Maui fire too, this isn't to pick apart and analyze, and we are waiting on time, but we do want to ask the right questions, and we want to be in the current event and go, what in the world happened?
Yeah.
And we all have a background with the fire because we're coming up on the 3-year anniversary of the CZU fire,
This
Santa
Wednesday.
Cruz, and yeah, and that swept through, and I think all of us were evacuated. I know I was evacuated for over a week. You know, we had to load up horses and chickens and dogs and cats and get out of Dodge, and it was you know, it was kind of a tough week. You know, what do you do with all these animals and things like that? So.
And it's
You know, we were
traumatizing. I mean, even if you didn't lose anything, it's traumatizing. The sense of fear. I mean, I remember the night when the CZU fire started and when they had been going for a while, my wife looked over the hills and we could see the fires coming over the hills. And it was only just a few miles away from us. And she's like, I'm out of here. So and then she left and my daughter left and then we were packing up. So we know what it feels like to have that fear, we know people who lost their homes and everything. Like I know friends who lost everything in that fire, everything they owned. You know, I don't know anybody who died personally. So I don't know what that feels like, but we definitely want to say we love you, Maui. We love you, Lahaina. We love you, people. We're praying for you. We're on your side, and we're also for justice. We're those of you who are saying, "Hey, what happened?" Because no matter how this was going on and whatever theory you have about it, it was clearly a public safety catastrophic failure. The people who are paid quite well to make sure that people are safe did not do their job. I mean, granted, sometimes things happen, then we can't stop it. But it looks to me like the facts remain that the people who are in charge did not handle it right.
Yeah, we have an old saying from the fire services. You know, I was a firefighter, career firefighter and paramedic, and it was a risk. How much do you risk? And we would risk a little for property. We would risk a little bit more for the environment if there was something dangerous that needed to be taken care of. And we would risk a lot for human life. And that was basically our grid that we went through. We weren't going to give our lives away for, you know, a Nintendo game to go in and save someone's stuff. But we would do high risk. And when we look at this Maui fire, there needs to be asked a lot of questions. I don't know, did any of you notice things?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things swirling around, and you know, you'll always have your conspiracy theorists out there. But you know, I have a deeper respect for conspiracy theorists now because this last 5 or 6 years, you know, a lot of times the difference between a conspiracy is 6 months, you know, and so give it time. And so some of these I think are worth at least listening to. Don't write them off with your biased. You know, a lot of times we say, oh, that can't be. That's just weird. No, why would they do that? Why would they do that? You know, the whole 9/11, you know, we've seen all kinds of things. JFK, you know, those have been unsolved in a lot of people's minds. And this one is a tough one. So what had happened is we had a tail end of a hurricane to where they got the winds. So it was a very windy event and they had fires. And the fire department said they had put them out earlier in the day. It was 100% contained or out. I'll say at least contained, but I believe that is supposed to be out. And so they left and they were not there, knowing that there'd be 70-mile-an-hour winds later in the afternoon when I guess this front comes on. And so we know that the schools in the area were closed that day. I don't know why they were closed. If it was, I don't think it was a holiday, but it could have been something to do with the winds. Maybe they were planning on being out of power. All I know is from what I've read is that children were at home while parents were at work. And so you had a lot of children in homes. And when this fire came through, they didn't even know until their apartment building had already caught on fire, things like that. So there's expected a lot of loss of children. And so that's even more heartbreaking. That's kind of the details of what I heard. I saw lots of videos where, you know, people are driving out of there and there's fires. One video even had a lady dead on the side of the road. I think she was dead. They just said, we can't help her. We can't help her. And they just kept going. It was really a horrifying scene for anyone that was there. I have a personal friend there, a guy named Mike, who lived in Lahaina, and he's just right outside that city, and it just is devastating to him. My city is gone. It's wiped clean off the
Wow.
map.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot of film, even people in the waters, who swam out into the water. I mean, and then the smoke was so bad that some people even still died in the water because the smoke was so bad. People, and so there's, it was horrible, catastrophic, just 10-foot flames on both sides, people getting out of their cars, running towards the ocean. People who stayed in their cars lost their lives. I mean, you can see some of this footage on the internet. There's a lot of it out there. I think the question in everybody's mind is why? Like, what caused this? Why were they not prepared? What things don't make sense? And Chris, your assessment as a firefighter and retired, and what is it that doesn't make sense about the story? I mean, there's a couple things, and I think of, like you mentioned this, Ron, that the same guy who's in charge of the incident commander, who was over the incident command of this event, was also the incident commander over the Las Vegas shooting. So,
Yeah.
which the FBI turned up with no motive for the shooter, and then a bunch of stuff happened. So, we have to go back into the Las Vegas shooting, but it's like, the guy who killed, who shot out of the windows, there were 2 windows broken. There was only one shooter, they said, and that one shooter, but everybody on the ground said there were more than one shooting. Yeah. There was shooting coming from other places. And then the guy who, died, somebody took his laptop's hard drive. So all the data that guy had is gone. And then the guy who got in a firefight with him in the hallway apparently took a bullet to the ankle, disappeared to Mexico for 3 weeks. And the only time he was ever interviewed was on the talk show of Ellen DeGeneres show. So there's all kinds of weird stuff surrounding, and that guy was in charge. He was the incident commander. Was it Pelletier?
Yeah, John Pelletier.
And he's the same incident commander over Maui. So that doesn't fit. That doesn't make sense. What else do we get? No, that just
doesn't make too much sense. Although an incident command is incident command, but if he were the incident commander, he's in the PD side. He's not on the fire side. So that just gives me pause, because it was obviously a fire incident first. Although evacuation and rescue is a it's cross disciplines. You're going to use all your resources, but this was beyond evacuation. So what I know,
the theme there is about the same as Vegas. They didn't get any support from all that I heard. People are like, where were officers? I mean, there was no alarms set for one. They should have had fire alarms go off, very least a tsunami alarm. They had an alarm system that you manually turn on to alert people. But people complained about not having any personnel there to guide people out, to tell them to evacuate, any of that stuff. So it seems like, a ball was dropped in that PD area, at least, and I understand that the firefighters, they only have 65 personnel for all 3 islands, I think. And so I could see where they could just be shorthanded naturally, but it's just weird, especially if they were there earlier with the fire.
Yeah, well, it's Maui has an outdoor siren system, and it's a very they test it all the time, because it works for tsunamis, hurricanes, dam breaches, flooding, volcano eruptions, hazmat incidences, you name it, they have it, and it's not on the grid. It's battery operated, and so they test it at least monthly and often more. And people who are, the island can have some technological dead spots in it. So the people of the island, they know when they hear a siren that they know when the tests are scheduled, and they know that if it's not scheduled, that they need to get emergency information. And there is absolutely no record by the whole emergency management system that the sirens were even activated. So they could show that in kind of like an Amber Alert. They type that in at their incident command system. So it was never no record in the computer that the sirens were ever activated. And of course, that's the first line of evacuation and warning to the residents. And so that was probably the most interesting thing to me, that no warning was given in a very well practiced warning system. I mean, we all know about tsunamis. I mean, we live in a beach town, and we know that when you get that warning, you need to move. And so these people in Maui, they know and respect those emergency systems.
Wow.
Yeah.
So usually you have a redundancy. You have a backup plan, a backup plan, and a backup plan. What I heard was that there was a catastrophic failure of personnel, but also on the top leadership. Apparently, the chief of fire wasn't even on the island, and what the news is saying this is the driest season. They have fires all the time. Well, why would the chief of fire not be on the island in the driest season when there's fires all the time? And if it doesn't make any sense, or at least who would he put in charge? Who's in charge then when he's not there? Like, it just seems like there was a drop the ball. You usually have the redundancies to stop it. And if someone drops the ball, then something else happens. And none of those took place. And it just seems like they just let it burn.
Yeah, there must have been somebody. I mean, that does, like you said, it doesn't make sense. And as far as, I mean, the mainstream media's immediate narrative was a raging wildfire was fueled by unprecedented heat and drought, and it was caused by some sort of man-made climate change, and then it killed all these people. But the actual records of weather on Maui, they don't show that. I just wanted to pull up. Here is a record of what the Maui temperatures are right now. You can see in August right now, the lows are in the 60s, and the highs are about 80. 88, 89, maybe up to 90. And, honestly, they're in the hot season. Most people don't go to Hawaii in the summertime because it's so hot. And they're in the dry season. This happens every year. And I want to show you. So this is 2023. Now, look at 2003, and you're going to see things pretty much the same. You see up here, they're the same time. Now, this is in September, but if you look in August, you're looking up in the 90s. It's actually hotter back then in 2003. And I looked at all the temperatures from 2003 for 20 years. And basically, there was very little fluctuation. And so the idea that we're in some sort of climate change, and this is man-made because you're burping too much, or you're running your lawnmower and you shouldn't, shame on you. It has nothing to do with that DARPA and HARP are putting thousands of gallons every day of boron and aluminum and other, what are there, over 200 weather changing operations of the government that no one is calling account to. So I'm just calling BS on climate change.
Yeah. And this is one of the things the guy alludes to at the very end of his presentation. I think this is the mayor.
With state, county, and federal support, that it took less than a quarter of a day, 6 hours, to get the approval from the president to bring those resources in. This was, of course, a shock to see a hurricane and its winds. I think that we're seeing this for the first time in many different parts of the world. I've been contacted by several governors across the country to share their experiences in a time where global warming is combined with strengthening.
So let's just go over a few of the red flags that he said. Very coordinated. Bomb and fire went off. All we will need to rebuild is billions of dollars in its own likeness and own image with its own values. What does that even mean? And it's so coordinated with state, county, and federal support that within less than 6 hours, they got approval from the president to bring resources, hurricane-type winds that just happened to be the same time as the bomb-like fire. Governors calling to share their experience. So we start the press conference out with bombs and explosions, then set up how we're going to get some smart cities in Hawaii, and then we end it with 2030 propaganda of global warming.
Yeah. 2030 propaganda, global warming. And we knew that, right, Chris? We know that we're gonna see these type of things happen, right?
Yeah, whether it was an intentional false flag or not, they are going to know how to leverage a good emergency, as Nancy Pelosi would say. Never waste a good emergency to get your agenda pushed. And so we know that they want you to to follow the fear mongering of the climate change agenda scenarios so that you will willingly give up your rights, give up your property. And we know that there are just some nefarious things going on in that area, even about rebuilding laws that were put in place as recently as this year in Maui. So
Yeah,
time will tell.
Time will tell. And we're hearing a lot of stuff about weather weapons or focused energy beams, things like that. And before you write some of that stuff off, I mean, I did a bear pause 5 months ago on the earthquake in Turkey. I don't know if you remember that one, but the earthquake in Turkey, and you can look that one up on wakethebearradio.com. But they had a senator in a world court from Romania saying, shame on you for using weather weapons on Turkey. And she says, and everyone says these earthquakes were really bizarre. They were spread out. They were not something that is normal. But they said, you've killed all these people and the blood's on your hands. They seem to be in the know with that. So there are possibilities. We can't just say, oh, that's just, I've never heard of it, or I haven't seen it, explained on CNN, and so it can't exist. I mean, the government's been saying that for a long time. So,
right.
So when people talk about weather weapons or what is it, directional energy,
direct energy weapons, DEW.
Yeah. Deuce. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
I think all we can go by is what the personal testimonies are that you see on social media. I don't think we can really trust what the media is saying, the mainstream media, and even the narrative of the government, because that is most of the positions of high-level individuals in leadership in the government are quite often installed in order to carry on, especially at this time in our nation's history when we're getting a real push on the Agenda 2030 phenomenon and the things that are there. So we've seen directed energy weapons in California before. When you look at Paradise Fire, I mean, the things that were shown there, that fire was 3 times hotter than the average fire. And I remember doing an analysis of it. Normally, things burn at 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, the glass melted in those structures, and plastic near the house was untouched, and metal melted. And so that's even higher than 2700 degrees. And there were smart meters that were completely burned out within their confined closets, and nothing else was burned in the house. So what the fire ignites is fire doesn't burn like that under natural circumstances. So you can go, well, look at the high wind. Well, the high wind would still burn. It would move the fire very quickly, but that does not account for the things that were shown at the Paradise Fire. And I saw a few strange things at the Maui fire. There was a report that they found some deceased people who were sitting in their lounge chairs upright, as though something had hit them so quickly they didn't have a chance to even move. Wow. Now, you'd think you'd hear something. I mean, fire's noisy. You'd think you'd hear something. I don't know what they were doing in their lounge chairs with the whether they were outside or inside. Maybe it was like a Barker lounger. And then I saw a picture of this dog that was obviously hit so quickly, and he was in this position that wasn't like a dog that would die of inhalation or even heat exposure. He was incinerated, and he was in a position totally quickly, obviously didn't have a chance. So that's an unusual fire behavior.
Yeah. I think that we don't have all the facts yet. We have to hold off. I mean, but the reality is that the technology through DARPA, we know that direct energy weapons work, or that technology is they have that they can control the weather. The there's, they've been, peppering the skies with chemtrails, and what is it they're putting on those chemtrails? We don't know, because they're denying they're even doing it. So we can't even investigate.
We know.
Yeah, well,
if you watch
aluminum.
Geo Engineering Watch, they have laboratory planes that follow these planes that line our skies with chemtrails, and they stick their hand out the window. They collect the sample and they put it right in, and it spits out. They know exactly what's out there. Beryllium, aluminum.
Yep.
Boron,
Very high stuff that's put in the atmosphere that's so like a dust that when it gets into the ground and it gets into the trees and everything, it creates fires that are unnatural, So and it's aluminum and barium, you wouldn't think would be flammable, but when they're in a dust form, they increase the flammability and the height.
Yeah.
Well,
aluminum fires.
You meant HARP, right?
Yeah. DARPA and HARP both have weather programs.
Okay.
And this technology isn't like, this isn't movie technology. It exists. There's patents for it. It's been shown to be true. Like you said, Ron, they've tested it. They've checked it out, Chris. So it's just a matter of, was that used here? It seems like it might have been, but we don't know for sure. And we have to kind of really keep checking.
Yeah. And as we kind of close out on the Maui fire, we do just, again, want to state that our compassion goes out to the people. And this is the area of the burn. It looks like that the part up at not the high top, but was near, do you say it, Lahaina? That where the fire probably started and then burned down and also burned up. So we just want to say our hearts are moved for the victims of the fire, and we'll be praying for them. And if you do give to the fire victims, make sure you give to a legitimate organization. I would just say I would avoid the Red Cross, and I would avoid major foundations. And I would find out of reputable, maybe small churches or reputable organizations to give towards the victims.
Yeah, and we have a friend.
That's a challenge right there, because I'm hearing videos where they are saying they'll only allow the Red Cross and one other world organization, and that they had all these donations, and they are just sitting there, and they said, we're not taking any private donations. And this guy's like, our group gathered this. So do the research, though. I'm sure there's a church that's getting through. I mean, you don't have to give in the burn area. You can give to families all over that island.
That's right.
So
yeah, I have friends that, one of my buddies who's a pastor said, hey, me and my wife are giving money through this woman who used to be in our city in Santa Cruz and now lives in Maui, and I vouch for her. So my wife and I are going to help give money through her and through her church, through the church they're connected to there, so that we know that the people that are there, will manage the funds well, that they'll give it to people that are in need, and they'll love and care for people's, not only their physical, but also their emotional and spiritual needs as well. So that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Yeah. That's good. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say one last thing about that. Oprah Winfrey did buy 870 acres of Hawaiian islands in Hawaiian Island, Maui, for $6.6 million on top of the 100 acres she already owns. And that was just a few months ago. I think it was just about 3 months ago that she did that. So it's interesting.
Since you opened that can of worms, might as well talk about the smart island and smart city that they've been talking about. I mean, they are having what do you call it? A gathering, a conference. That's the word I'm looking for. They're having a conference this September on the next steps to making a smart island. Now, a smart city or a smart island is those 15-minute cities. Basically, it's dominated by high tech. The Internet of Things, where you have sensors and everything. So, every temperature, every person, where they're at, their banking, their habits, it's just all, and it's for efficiency. So it's like, okay, energy use is this much at this time. So we'll peak it up when people are moving around, and we know they're moving around because we can see it live. That's what they're talking about. And they want everybody to stay in really concentrated areas, high rise, and they have them all in one place, not spread out. And so that's kind of what, and so they want Maui to be the very first smart island. And
Well,
and,
yeah.
and
And did you know that there was a protest against that that was scheduled that day? That never happened. There was a
Really?
protest against smart cities in that island by the island peoples that day. It was scheduled for that day. It didn't happen.
Really? Are you sure?
Verifiable. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to put that in our notes. That's kind of a big thing to keep an eye on. It's just, they say there's no coincidences, and again, we'll let time tell. But that is pretty interesting. I know that I've heard too that there are a lot of people that were on Epstein Island that have a lot of property in that area, and so if this is a smart city to be built, and definitely Lahaina is not one of those cities that's going to say, hey, let's modernize. I mean, it's old. It's got traditions. The people want to stay pure to the land and those things. And to say, hey, we're going to get rid of all these things. You're all going to have the high-tech, modern, controlled life. I don't see that with Hawaiians and stuff. I've been there myself. Beautiful area. And it will come back. But, yeah, we keep them in our prayers. I guess that's enough to say it. I don't want to be labeled as a conspirator, or conspiracy
Totally.
theorist, I should say. But those
I
are good
don't care.
questions.
I are
And
one.
that's what we need to ask right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's interesting. We are in a different mode as a country. I mean, instantly people knew about the police chief. 10 years ago, that probably would have been unnoticed. But people are like looking for patterns or looking for things. And it's making it extremely hard for the deep state to do anything, whether this was it or not. It is making it very hard. And I'm very proud of those people that are digging in and connecting dots, because they're not going to get away with it. And that's why they are going down, because the world's caught on to them. People are waking up. This bear in California is waking up as well. So it's good news in that area.
Yeah,
definitely in that area.
Yeah, that's a great point. And speaking of waking up, did you see the article about ivermectin? And again is a give it time that the FDA had a then and now pronouncement on ivermectin.
Yes. Yes. In fact, I have a video on that if you want to see that one.
Play it, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I want to see it.
Oh yes, this is I got a kick out of watching this one. So let me play it.
So just got some breaking news. The latest numbers from Florida, they have broken a single day record for an increase in the number of deaths. 1,338 new deaths. And as you know, nearly 18 months into this global pandemic, more than 646,000 Americans have died.
Let's scare everyone.
Medical professionals are still caught up in a fight between science and dangerous misinformation. That includes the drug ivermectin, which is most often used to deworm pets and livestock. Disinformation sites, though, claim it's a COVID cure. But the FDA, even the drug company that makes it, warns patients not to take it for COVID. Despite that, a judge in Ohio ordered a hospital to administer the drug to a COVID-19 patient in spite of the doctor protesting because the patient's wife demanded it. And then there's popular podcaster Joe Rogan, who announced he's tested positive for COVID-19 after doing some shows in Florida. While he's being treated with monoclonal antibodies, which are effective, he also told his millions of followers that he's taking ivermectin. Joining me now, NBC News senior reporter Ben Collins, who has been covering this information for us for a very long time. So, Ben, tell us about ivermectin and why and how these lies about it keep going on.
These lies.
Back up to the last year or so to the old hydroxychloroquine phase of the anti-vax panic. The same people who were pushing hydroxychloroquine last year onto people as a so-called cure are the people pushing ivermectin now. There's a group.
Yes, we were.
Oh yeah, there's a group called Frontline Doctors. That's what he's
referring to.
Loud and proud.
Yeah, and so you see what they did there. She says lies. They focus in on the pets thing. What was it? Didn't the inventor of ivermectin get a Nobel Prize?
Yes,
and it was
did in
for
2015.
people. Yeah, and it was for people. It wasn't for your horse. when
yeah,
when you
it
got that.
almost completely eradicated river blindness because it was cheap and the common people could take it and it had very low side effects.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So it just shows.
So,
yeah.
hey, give it time. Isn't that our theme tonight? Just give it some time, and you will see that those who were telling you were crazy for taking ivermectin. I think of my wife. We got a prescription for ivermectin, and we couldn't get it fulfilled. My wife went to CVS and tried to get it filled, and the pharmacist there kind of laughed her off, treated her like she was crazy, and wouldn't fulfill the human dosage for ivermectin, which had prizes. It's been used for humans for like 30 years normally. And a doctor, so a pharmacist who's politicized, denied us getting ivermectin at CVS. And then of course we had to go online and find somebody else. And it was interesting because it was a doctor and said, listen, yeah, I'll prescribe it for you. Use this company here. Just to let you know, that's what I've been seeing consistently is towns where there is a lot more liberal leftist mindedness. They don't end up letting people get their prescriptions filled. So it was definitely a leftist talking point from the very beginning. And it's so weird. You kept telling people, listen, why would they do this? Why would they do this? Joe Rogan was pissed. Like they blackballed him. And like, why? And it's like, there's an agenda here. And the agenda is all the money that was needed to be made through the injections has already been made now. And now they can go back to having FDA approve or say that it's approved to use ivermectin, which is cheap and easy and free. And, it's not, doesn't have a patent on it, and it's cheap, but, if you remember back then, if the law was, if there was any other approved drug for this novel coronavirus, then they couldn't get the emergency approval for the vaccines. So they had to shoot it down, and they had to say, no, ivermectin's bad. Hydrochloroquine, that's not real. You shouldn't use that, because the money behind the pharmaceutical companies were driving the entire agenda from top to bottom.
Yeah. And what's unprecedented is that physicians have always been able to make their treatment plans for their patients. And what this did was it took a highly effective medication out of the hands of doctors who wanted to save their patients. And these doctors had high prices to pay. I mean, many of them were threatened with their medical licenses. I just think it's a travesty. We don't hear oops, we're sorry for either Joe Rogan or to the doctors that had threats, and some of them did have to stop practicing. So
yeah,
we're just hoping that justice will prevail and time will tell that there will be a price to pay for road blocking on purpose and effective. And I say on purpose because it was shown that had been used for so many things, and cancer, there was acne, there was the rosacea, obviously, some of the parasites. And so I'm hoping that justice will be done for those that kept it from being available to people who needed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
The arc of history leans towards justice, and that's we're seeing that happen. Ron, can you zoom in on that thing you just put up? That is amazing. Look at this document that he put up.
Yeah, I'm trying here. I'll have to move it. Well, let me try this screen here. I have it on a screen, so let's try to get it as big as I can.
There you go.
So what you have here is when you had the cases in the millions of people taking the vaccination. And you notice that today, when they announced that it's okay to use ivermectin, look how many people are getting the vaccination. So see, the vax had already run its course. They made all the money they're going to make. And they're like, oh yeah, you can use it now. Now that we made our billions and trillions enforced, and even that news clip from MSNBC, if I played it longer, he would say, why would you even pay for ivermectin when you can get the shot for free? You know, that's what the guy says.
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
and it's just like,
Because
oh
you
my,
don't want to die suddenly.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I just thought since you were
So,
talking, I thought I'd
so
pull this
over
up.
here, Ron, it was during all the shots happening, it was horse paste
Yeah.
and ivermectin and hydrochloroquine were bad.
Yeah.
But now that all the money's been made, I mean, that's just really that's just pure evil. That is
It
the
is.
love of money is the root of evil, the Bible says, right? The
Yeah.
love of money is the root of all evil. So people who love money more than they love human life, they were in control of this. That's what you need to wake up to. There are people, folks, in your government that do not care about human life, that they're not motivated by what you're motivated. And that's the problem, is that we think, hey, we love people. We want to, we want to care for people. No one could be that horrendous and horrible. No one. And that's the same thing that people thought about in Nazi Germany. They didn't think that it actually existed, that the stories of concentration camps could be real. And they said, now how could humans be that evil? I just can't believe that. Well, that's because you're judging it through your moral framework, which is that you believe in a God and you have fear of God. These people have no fear of God. All they care about is money and control and power. And this is why Wake the Bear exists, is to get you to pay attention that there's real evil out there. And the gospel of Jesus Christ is that we win, but we have to stand against it. We can't just wait for the rapture to come. Our job is to occupy this land until Christ returns, and to make it better and bring the kingdom of God on the earth now until he returns. So that's why we're here. That's why we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just on that same note, Brandon, it just, I'm going to pass on that. Let's move forward on that. I'm going to pass on that.
It might come back up because we're talking about the same evils, Chris. One of the big things that just came out, and I know you just watched it and I just watched it, is the J6 narrative is falling apart. And there was a massive campaign to suppress the truth called the J6 Select Committee, that it turns out that they didn't even interview the Capitol Police Chief. On hand that day was Police Chief Stephen Sund, and they didn't interview him, but they saying they're trying to get to the bottom of J6 and they want to blame it all on Trump, but they didn't even interview the police chief captain there. And and Tucker did a episode 15, it just came out this last week, and he actually interviews Sund. And this is the weird thing. Sund says, they barely interview me. I think I had 3 minutes of interview time, and the J6 committee did not interview me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tucker, who's been fired from Fox, said, well, the previous organization, we actually already interviewed you, and it was supposed to be aired in April, and it never got aired. Wonder why? And then of course Tucker was fired, and it never came on. And so now Tucker gave him a second interview to go back and redo all what he already did. And it's all coming out now, folks. This was a coordinated false flag hoax that was created to entrap and make people who are patriotic look like crazy people. And interesting, some of the things that you'll find out about the Tucker when he gave the interview is that they had what the intelligence was telling them was 18 domestic terrorists that they had intelligence showing there were 18 domestic terrorists there that day. And then, of course, there was plenty of feds there, and there was actual surveillance that found out that this was all going to happen. And guess who was left in the dark that day? The police chief, Stephen Sund. And then he was fired and replaced by somebody else and never interviewed. So this is a coordinated attack, not only on the ground, but also in getting the information out to the public. And if you just went ahead and believe what they told you, oh, J6, those are crazy MAGA people, those people that did the same thing to Jesse Smollett. Oh, wait, no, that was a hoax too, right? That's what we're seeing is hoax after hoax after hoax put forth by this prophetic voice called the mainstream media, which is a false prophetic voice, telling what you should believe and telling you who you should hate. And this has got to stop. We've got to wake people up.
Yeah, if you look at the look on Tucker Carlson's face during the interview, it just he was befuddled at how inept and obviously conspiratorial the government was to, it wasn't just Chief Son that wasn't interviewed. It was the top 3 law enforcement officers who were on duty that day. And the reason they gave for not interviewing is they made a decision that only current law enforcement officers would be interviewed. And so those 3 guys were either fired or told to resign. And so they didn't get their testimony in the J6 investigations. And so it's just, you could see the look tells it all. And really what I was wanting to say was, as we investigate things that are hard, we remember we're in a war. We're in an information war. We're in a 5th generation type information war, and it can be exhausting and it can do something to your heart. So you have to pace yourself. But the truth is, if you don't open your eyes, then you are complicit. And I mean, none of us like looking at things like child trafficking or the corruption in our nation or the things going on that are killing people. And it's hard to fathom, because if this is true, what else is true? And that's a big jump to make. And we understand with Wake the Bear, that's what we're trying to do, is say, open your eyes, do the research, pace yourself. But it's coming. The flood of information and truth is coming. Just wait and see. Give it time.
Yep. And we're seeing that. I mean, we are seeing a change in the tide. I mean, just like we talked earlier about the Iowa State Fair. I mean, it was basically all Trump, and it's because those that were diligent early on, getting out that information, doing the research that nobody really wants to enjoy. They don't enjoy the bad news, but they stood there, and more people came, and more people are being added. And, there is really no other choice. You can't just say, I give up, right? I mean, if you give up, it'll only get worse. It will get so bad. You'll be literally a 3rd world fall apart country. So people are standing up, and there is no other choice. We need to go all the way to the end. Zero-sum game. Exactly. There is no other choice, and no other choice for those that want to do what the Lord would want. And I believe the Lord wants righteousness to always win out. Truth always to win out. Know the truth. It'll set you free, and so there is no other choice. If you're a follower, you can't do sidelines. We are called to expose, Ephesians says, have nothing to do with the deeds of darkness, but rather expose them, so we are commanded to expose those things. So,
yeah. And I'm looking forward to the day when we start taking calls again, like we did on the radio show, where we can actually have people call in and say, what do you think? And that's coming very soon. We've tested our systems. We'll have that coming up soon. But I really do believe that we're a community of truthers, or a growing community of digital warriors, truthers, who are actually exposing darkness. And the Bible says this, do not grow weary in doing well, because you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. And so that's what we're saying, that we're not going to grow weary. We're not going to give into fear. We're going to keep pressing forward. We are Americans. America didn't come into existence by a bunch of people who are wimps. You have to fight. And that's we're not talking about physical violence. We're talking about spiritual prayer. Right. We're talking about you exposing darkness. And we've got to bring things into the light. We have to bring stuff into the light so that exposure can happen and truth can be told, and people can be set free and delivered by, like you said, by the truth. The truth will set you free, which reminds me of a great thing that's coming on, that Wake the Bear is going to be hosting a night, watching Into the Light, a watch party coming up with Into the Light. If you guys are familiar with Into the Light, I'm going to share a screen here. This is hold on a second. Wish I had.
Yeah, they're the makers of Out of Shadows.
Makers of Out of Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Mike Smith, who was a Hollywood stunt coordinator, producer, and got high level 30 years in Hollywood. He's the one that produced the movie Out of Shadows. And it had within 6 days, it had 33 million watches. Wow. Mm-hmm. And so he's doing part 2, which is called Into the Light. We're going to be hosting it at Convergence on August 25th, Friday, August 25th from 6 to 9. So those of you who are in town and around, come join us. we'll just be discussing this film.
So good. Now, you two previewed it. Just give a quick synopsis so people know what they would be coming to see.
Well, General Flynn is in it. He's featured in it. Mike Smith is interviewing General Flynn. Laura Logan, who is, I think, is an ABC Pulitzer Prize winning journalist. So one of the most decorated journalists. She was in wartime. She's in it. She has an awakening in it, which is very interesting. There's about 6 former intelligence officers or military who are saying that we are in 5G. They explain what 5G warfare is, and they explain what the concern they have about AI and using it. So it's basically just showing us that we need to really be diligent to bring things into the light.
Yeah, that's really good.
Very good. Looking forward to that. I can't wait. Hey, I wanted to do kind of time will tell, and this is one other thing, and it's kind of a service for our audience, and that is, if you are suffering from any long-term COVID symptoms still, and I know some people that have complained about that, and we had a guest on quite a while ago, Dr. Brian Ardis, and he was the guy that was talking about the snake venom, and a lot of people gave him a hard time for it. But I listened to an interview this week on Blessed to Teach, and I was just blown away. The guy was on top of it. So I wanted to share a little bit about it because I was excited about it when I saw it. So what they did is he's going to be explaining in great detail on the America Great Awakening Tour in Las Vegas, and I think it's next month. And he says this is the last time he will talk about COVID. He said in those settings. He says if you want to know anything about COVID, you're just going to have to watch that one presentation, because what he's going to be covering is they did a study, and he had all the details, but I didn't get the name of the study, but it was a peer-reviewed type study. And they collected people from all around the world that are still suffering with these 21 symptoms. They had to have had all 21, and they've had to have them for over a year and a half. That would be like chronic fatigue, dizziness, low-grade fever the entire time, can't take deep breaths, loss of taste and smell, memory lapses, muscle pain and weakness, diarrhea and vomiting, concentration difficulties, sleep difficulties, mood disorders like depression, headaches, chest tightness, heart palpitations, cognitive impairment, and motor deficit, kind of like a Parkinson's. And so if you are suffering from those, this is what this study did. They collected people that had all of those, and they've had them for over a year and a half. And they had one treatment they did for 6 days, and it got rid of everybody's symptoms. And then so let me yes, everybody's. It was quite impressive. So let me just play just a little bit of this interview just to kind of give you an idea of what he did here. Let me get it here. Where are you? Here we go. I got it queued up.
This is the first slide. I'm going to show it to the whole audiences. And the title is, do you or anyone you know still suffer with any of these symptoms post-COVID? So just so you know, in January, they took a group of these people that had all of these symptoms, all of them, and they gave them one treatment for 6 days and told them all to stop after 6 days. And before they started the treatment for 4 days before, they were told to keep track on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being the symptom doesn't exist anymore, 5 being as bad as it can be.
Right.
They took all one of those 21 symptoms I just read off to you, and they made them track what's the severity of those every day for 4 days before they started the treatment. Then they were expected to track on the same scale every single symptom every day of the treatment and every day until they all disappeared. So I just want y'all to know at this Reawaken Tour, I'm going to do this presentation. This one treatment of one thing cured every single one of those symptoms, and they only needed to do it for 6 days. And it took the last symptom in one of the persons after stopping the treatment. So he started the treatment, took it for 6 days. They stopped the treatment. And then by day 21, all symptoms of everybody in the study, 100% of all their symptoms were gone.
Wow.
What's even more impressive is that by day 3 of treatment, 50% of all of those symptoms were 100% gone. They only took the treatment for 6 days, stopped it, and then 21 days after starting the treatment was when the last symptom even registered for any patient in the study.
Wow.
They then waited
100%
6
success.
months, Rick. They waited 6 months after the 6-day treatment and called every single one in the study back on a phone call to review all the symptoms they had 6 months ago before they started the treatment. And they wanted to know, did any of your long hauler COVID symptoms you had for a year and a half that never went away, how many of those came back? And not a single one of them ever came back.
Come on.
Now, what's interesting
Success.
is there's medical doctors and professionals all over the world, including myself, who have been proposing antidotes, solutions to all things related to COVID and post-COVID.
Right.
And not a single one of them have actually told you about this treatment.
Except for Dr. Artis.
Except for me. And I've been screaming about this treatment since
There
my
it is.
Watch the Water documentary dropped, and it's going to shock the world because I'm going to show them what they did with these people.
So he'll go in great detail with this thing, but as you can see on the screen, Nicoderm is what it is. That is a patch that when you're trying to get off smoking, and it gives you nicotine. There's a nicotine receptors in the back of your brain area, and that affects your breathing as well. But so they basically took the Nicoderm patch. Now you can get that at CVS or Walgreens. I don't think you need a prescription, but it's readily available. And this, I think that was an amazing result, especially, and I'll get more information when it comes out. I just wanted to share that because I think it was such a powerful result, 100%. And 6 months later, it was still gone. It cleared up. And I know people that are still suffering. So this is something I would say, just buy a box or two or whatever it is of the Nicoderm. Do this for 6 days. Just do it for a week, and see what happens. So anyway,
just
I want to
amazing
share
to me,
that.
amazing to me that that there's all of these remedies that are out there that still have not been discovered. Obviously smoking's bad for you, but nicotine itself is something that's created by God. So to get it into your body from some other way that's unhealthy, that is healthy, is amazing that it's turning out to work. And I just can't even remember, doctors are practicing medicine. They are learning. There's the phrase, the thinking God's thoughts after him. Doctors are learning what God has already, created in nature for us to heal us. And so to think God's thoughts after him is to discover what he already has created. And I just think, we got to be able to be tough enough to actually ask the tough questions, to seek out and have the boldness and the courage to actually seek out truth. I have a couple quotes here I wanted to share towards the end here, but Thomas Paine is not always known for being a Christian man, but a very ardent man of truth. In fact, he was more Christian than people know when you actually study some of his writings. But here's a couple that I think of. Those who expect to reap the benefits of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigue of supporting it. We've got to fight for freedom. We have to. It takes time. It's exhausting to do what we're doing. And the reality is he who dares not offend cannot be honest. So we can't shrink back from people that might be offended that we're sharing ideas that are not orthodox, or that sounds like snake oil or a conspiracy theory. Well, okay. Yes, but what if it's true? The question we have to ask is it true? And how is it true? And how can we verify it? And how can we test it? And that's what Dr. Artis is doing. And that's what doctors all over the world have been doing, while the mega orthodoxy has shut down experimentation, debate, reason, using logic. And that's what we're for. We believe that, God is good and God is big, and the truth doesn't need to be protected.
No, it doesn't.
That's right. So
it needs to be shown.
100 shows. Woohoo!
Yes. And thank you for sharing this with us, this special 100th episode. Share with your friends, like, subscribe, do all the things that you can to support. We would really appreciate it. And God bless.
God bless you.
This has been Wake the Bear Radio on KSCO 1080 on your AM.